I'm Phil Buchanan, Executive Chairman of Canon Financial Institute, headquartered in Athens, Georgia. I want to thank Dr. Gooner for his requesting that I participate in your class this short semester, this summer program at the University of Georgia. Honored to be a part of it. So what is Canon Financial Institute? We are a professional development and enhancement corporation that focuses exclusively in the wealth management industry. What does all of that mean? Well, professional development is exactly what you might think. We help new individuals who are coming into the financial services industry develop the acumen and skill set to be successful as financial advisors. We then work with financial services firms, wealth management companies, to enhance their profitability and their long-term sales success. It's a lot of fun. Now, as you can imagine, sales skills and sales development is a large part of any enhancement program that financial services firms might go through. And so Rich was kind enough to ask me to share with you some thoughts and some insights that I have gleaned over the last 3 decades in the financial services industry. So again, none of these are absolute keys to success, but they are some small insights that I've been able to gain over that period of time. I don't think any of you could ever have anticipated the last 3.5 months, but here we all are. You're taking classes via Zoom rooms. You become digitally even more connected than you were before. You've been able to adapt and adjust to these changing circumstances. And so the key trait or characteristic number one that I want to focus on is the ability to adapt and adjust, the ability to roll with the punches. Good sales professionals are very adept at adjusting to changing circumstances. And let me tell you something, you're going to face change your entire professional career. There'll be products and services that your organization will change and rotate. New things will be introduced in, others will be phased out. There'll be new pricing considerations. There'll be new compensation plans. Chances are that you will work for yourself or for other companies several times over the course of your career. And so that ability to be flexible, to adjust to those circumstances, that is going to have a lot to do with the level of success that you enjoy over the course of your career. I've met many very well-educated and very well-prepared professionals who, quite frankly, were scared by any level of change. They hated the concept of change, and it held them back in their career. And so if I could wish one thing for each of you, that is to be very adept at changing circumstances and the flexibility with which you apply yourself. Second key thought. In the world of real estate, they will tell you that the 3 most important things as far as the value of real estate goes is location, location, location. Sales success is predicated on 3 things as well. Relationships, relationships, relationships. And when I say relationships, I'm focused on those important relationships that you will cultivate and develop inside your organizations, outside your organizations with clients, prospects, customers, etc. And third, with your communities of practice. So let's think about each of these for just a moment. In every organization, be it large or be it small, there are key individuals within that company who have the ability to support you and to be a hard-charging advocate for you. Or at the same time, if they aren't a supporter of yours, if they're not an advocate of yours, that doesn't mean that they will in any hostile way be against you. They may just not be that type of individual that helps you to succeed, even in questionable circumstances or questionable times. And so it's absolutely critical that you develop great relationships inside your organization, spending time with individuals both at work as well as after work, and really getting to know those individuals on a personal level. Again, I've met many very, very fine individuals who should have a lot more sales success than they have. But when it came down to what was the determining factor in their success, they spent a lot less time developing personal relationships inside their organization than those who were enjoying a lot more sales success. So again, find those key individuals inside your organization and seek them out and cultivate and develop those relationships. Now, outside, obviously, with your customers, with your prospects, with your clients, you want to forge good relationships. And forging good relationships means that you focus on what's of interest to them. What are the things that excite them? I'll give you just an example of what I'm talking about right here. I was invited several years ago to keynote a conference for a large regional financial services firm. There were 3 key individuals that each ran 3 different divisions of this company that were chairing, if you will, this particular meeting. I did a little research and I found out that one of the individuals loved Sauvignon Blanc wine. I found out that another one of the individuals was a beer snob, if you will, loved small craft brews. And then I found out the third individual was a single malt Scotch drinker. And so I arrived at the hotel early before these individuals were scheduled to arrive. I got with the concierge and I delivered 2 bottles of chilled Sauvignon Blanc to the individual that liked wine. I bought a case of craft brews from the 2 main Athens breweries at that point in time. And so a total of 24 beers, had that on ice for that individual, and then brought the third individual a bottle of single malt Scotch. That night, each of these individuals took time to introduce me at the kickoff dinner, each having some very, very nice things to say. That company is a great client of our organization today, but because I took the time to understand what was meaningful to each one of them, what was of interest to each one of them, and then provided a small token of esteem for their inviting me in, that has paid so many dividends along the way. You want to celebrate also key milestones and successes in your customers' and clients' career. You want to celebrate those in the lives of the internal advocates you've got in your organization, and also outside in your communities of practice. And again, a little bit more information on communities of practice in just a moment. The third thing I'd like to share with you is you will develop in whatever sales role or responsibility that you take on, you'll develop great knowledge, no doubt, about the products and services that your company provides. But I want to remind you to do something, and that is to become incredibly knowledgeable about the industries of your customers or your clients. Not just understanding your own products and services, but understanding your consumers' industries so that you can be a resource and an advocate to help them with challenges and issues that they may face. For example, a good friend of mine is a financial advisor, specializes in working with physicians. This individual has built an incredibly good network with other business professionals who also provide services to medical professional doctors, etc. Recently, this one individual tapped into one of his network friends who is in the electronic medical records business because one of his physician clients was having a problem. And because he was able to be a resource and to be an advocate to help solve that issue, that physician is even more indebted to that financial advisor today than she was prior to this event occurring. So again, if you understand the industry of the customers and clients that you have, and you can be that type of resource, that will win you a lot of accolades in the long term. Another idea I've got for you is when someone does something good for you, it's incredibly important that you recognize that in an effective way. So let's think about some things. When you win a new customer, a new account relationship, in addition to anything else that might happen, let me suggest that you take the time to pen a handwritten note to that individual and letting them know how much you appreciate them becoming a client of your company, doing business with your organization. Today, and I understand that technology makes communication instantaneous. We've got the ability to send emails, we can send texts, we can do Snapchats, we can do FaceTime, we can do so many different things to communicate with individuals. And sometimes we will just shoot a quick text or shoot a quick email and say, thanks for the business, excited to be working with you. And that's wonderful, but that gets lost. That gets lost in the hundreds of emails that executives get on a daily basis. It gets lost even in the text folder occasionally. But handwritten notes, because they are so rare, tend to stand out. So one of the things I want to suggest to each of you is that as you begin your career, get some quality stationery. Get a good pen and get in the habit of writing 2 to 3 handwritten notes per day. This will cause you to stand out against everybody else who doesn't take that time. So when you get a new customer, send a handwritten note. When somebody refers you to a new customer or introduces you to a prospect, send that referring party a handwritten note, thanking them and recognizing them for the great steps that they've provided to you. Another thing that will come up from time to time is you'll have an internal colleague that will do something nice. They'll do something nice and help you out. They'll do something nice for a customer that you are a relationship manager for or that you've sold products or services to. When somebody in your company does something spectacular, you don't have to send them a handwritten note. Email. But don't email them. Email the individual that did something good for you. Email that person's boss and let the boss know of the great acts that their subordinate, their employee has done on behalf of the company to the customer or for you, etc. CC the individual, carbon copy, the individual that did the nice thing. So think about what happens. The boss gets this nice note or nice email from you. The boss is immediately going to hit forward on that email and comment to the employee, Sally, nice job, keep up the good work. Well, Sally already has a carbon copy of the original email because you made sure that Sally knew that you were recognizing her and saying thanks. And now she's got the second supporting adulation from her boss. She's going to be willing to do good things for you in the future. So keep up the great work there. Now, the fifth idea I've got for you. Join, and if there's not one around, create a community of practice networking group. Now, first off, what's a community of practice? Well, think about this. Whatever industry you go into, there are going to be others besides you and your company that sell into that particular industry. And what you want to do is you want to know who these other professionals are, and you want to network with these other professionals so that, again, you can be a great resource to the industry in which you're selling into, but also to enhance your own personal knowledge, your own personal skill set about what's going on within those segments. So as an example, again, we work in the financial services industry, and got a great client right now who formed a community practice networking group in Birmingham, Alabama several years ago. Now, this individual is in the financial services business as a wealth advisor, but he brought to the table the following types of individuals. He brought a mortgage lender to the table. He brought a commercial insurance broker to the table. He brought a corporate real estate specialist to the table. He brought a business banker to the table, and he also brought a corporate attorney to the table. And once a month, these individuals get together, usually for breakfast. They do a dinner once a quarter, but it's breakfast the other remaining months. And they spend that amount of time with each person listing out the top 2 to 3 trends or activities that are going on in the local community in their area of specialty. So you always know what's going on with interest rates. You always know what's going on from a legal standpoint. You know what's going on in the real estate marketplace. You know what's going on in the banking business. You know what's going on in the wealth management business. Everybody's very, very well connected. And naturally, what winds up happening is a lot of referrals are made in and among that group of how they can collectively grow their businesses together. So again, that's a community of practice. It's individuals that are selling into a very similar industry or niche business, but they do different things. They don't overlap, but they can be incredibly complementary. Now, final piece of advice I got for you, and it's advice number 7. Authenticity. Okay, and let's talk about authenticity for just a moment. I know in a lot of your professional development at the University of Georgia, you've learned different techniques for honing a pitch. And from time to time, we talk about elevator pitches. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you a dirty little secret. I've only had to do an elevator pitch one time, and that's when I was a rookie for the Trust Company of Georgia back in the late 1980s. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had to get on the elevator, and somebody turned to me and asked me what I did. And before we got to the 16th floor, I had to tell them what I did. And then we turned around at the 16th floor, and I asked that person what they did. And before we got to the ground floor, they had to be able to tell me. That's the only time. You don't get on elevators today and people turn to you and ask you what you do. That rarely happens. One challenge I've got with an elevator pitch is most people practice it enough to get it right. And so it comes off sounding pretty canned most of the time. I have found that the best elevator pitches don't actually speak in 15 seconds to exactly what you do. Most of you are pretty complicated or will be pretty complicated in your sales role and responsibility. And so you really have to give people a way to anchor or juxtapose what you're doing to something else they may be familiar with. For example, I will get asked on occasion, Phil, what do you do? And I use the Socratic method in answering my question. And so if somebody says, Phil, what do you do? I said, well, let me ask you this. Do you know many adult jobs out there require a license, right? You have to have a license to be a barber. You have to have a license to be a lawyer. You have to have a license to be a cosmetologist. You have to have a license to do several different things. Well, our company provides help for individuals in that licensure world when it's in the wealth management area. And once they've got the license to be able to do their professional trade, we provide consulting services and training services to help them be among the very best in their industry. Now, for most individuals, it makes sense that professionals have to have licenses. And so now they can anchor against that and use that to formulate a little bit better understanding of exactly what it is we do. So think about that when you get in your professional world and not have just a canned presentation, but be able to use Socratic methodology and help juxtapose what you do against what others might already understand a professional role or responsibility to be. Now, a second part B of this, when we get to authenticity, in order to be able to communicate with people what it is you do and the value that you provide. I think Simon Sinek got it absolutely right with his book, Start With Why. And if you've not read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, it is one of the best books that personally I've ever read. It spoke to some things that intuitively, I guess I always had known, but certainly became much more aware of it after reading that book. I spent about 4 years running Argent Financial Group. I served as their president. And Argent Financial Group is a wealth management firm. Had the opportunity to meet with a lot of matriarchs, a lot of patriarchs, and very wealthy families throughout the mid and deep South. And one of the things that you'll find if you're meeting with individuals and talking about money, those individuals can be very reluctant to open up. They can be very reluctant to share. And I found that by sharing my purpose and my why with them, it usually got them to open up. It created connection points. I would always say, you know, before we delve into your situation, I want to give you just a brief backdrop of the individual you're talking to and let you understand why I'm so committed to helping families make good financial decisions and good planning. Back in the mid-1970s, I lost an older sister in an airplane accident. She was engaged to be married to her fiance, who was also on the plane with her that day. Now, regrettably, they had made a lot of purchases, but had not done a lot of planning. And so after her death, and again, they weren't married yet, but they had owned some property together. They had these assets. They didn't have wills. They didn't have the I's dotted, didn't have the T's crossed. And so what was originally a tragic nightmare for my parents and myself became more than a 4-year ordeal to get their estates cleaned up and to get everything settled. And I remember it about 2 years in, hearing my mother ask my dad a question one night, why in the world they had done it the way that they did it. And it was in that moment in time that I recognized that by failing to plan, by failing to really think through how you want your legacy to operate, good chances are somebody would be cleaning up a lot of chaos down the line, and that can bring the heartache just back to bear again and again. And so today, Mr. and Ms. Jones, I'm probably going to ask you some fairly deep and some fairly introspective questions about what you want and why you want it that way. But the reason I'm doing that is so that you can rest assured that your motivations will ultimately be carried out and there won't be any chaos left to clean up. Now, when I would share that with individuals, you could see a connection point or realization on their level as to why I was going to be doing what I was doing that way. What was my motivation? I think that's absolutely critical. And that comes again from being prepared and having a genuine and authentic way about yourself and the way that you work. And my final point C to this last point is this: practice, practice, practice what you're going to say. Back in the day, it was a cassette recorder for me. Today, we've all got the digital phones that allow us to record our elevator pitch or our why or our value proposition. We can record that and we can listen to ourselves. You've got video recording capabilities where you can record yourself and observe yourself. Practice, practice, practice. Record yourself, listen to yourself 3-4 times on the way to work each day, 3 to 4 times on the way home each day. Do that for a week, and all of a sudden your authentic voice will really shine through. Now, one of the things I think is important to do is to get different perspectives, and I've asked a couple of my colleagues to join me today to share some of their wit and wisdom with you as well. Bill Eustis, who has been a colleague of mine for 7-8 years now, runs institutional sales force. You're going to hear from him in just a moment. And then Shannon Price, who has been a colleague of mine for a couple of years. She lives in the northeastern part of the United States and has national accounts throughout North America, actually several international accounts as well. And she's going to share some perspectives with you as well. So let's take a few moments right now and let's hear from our first colleague, Bill Eustis. Bill runs institutional sales for Canon. He's the key executive for managing many of the top relationships that our firm has in the asset management and wealth management community. Bill had a very distinguished career with Merrill Lynch prior to getting into the consulting field. He does a great job here, and Bill, excited that you're here with us. Several conversations that you and I have had over the years have focused on lessons that we both learned at a very early age, and one that you learned at an early age has really followed you throughout your career, and you call it preparation, but it really has a pretty significant meaning to you. Tell us about that.
Well, thanks, Phil. First of all, Preparation is the key, I think, to any business opportunity and any meeting or phone call that you go into with a potential client. Do the research on the company and the individuals, Phil, that are going to be in that meeting. So much information is available on social media today. You can really demonstrate a firm grasp of the company and the people that you're meeting with. By doing that preparation, I've also found, Phil, that you're going to be able to set clear objectives and outcomes for the meeting. You'll be able to steer the conversation in a way with a client that they're going to very quickly understand that you have command of their company and the issues that they're facing. The other thing I would say in the preparation, Phil, I found very valuable in my career is I always try and prepare 3 to 4 questions before I go into the meeting. By doing that preparation of those questions, Phil, it helps me unearth some pain points that the client might be having. But additionally, Phil, it helps me identify other potential opportunities that the client may not even be aware of. So it leads you in a direction of being able to do that. And when you ask those questions, Phil, I think a real key thing, and I think you and I both have really figured this out in our careers, is be empathetic, right? Listen to what the client is going through. What are their pain points? What are they struggling to find? Where are they in the process, Phil? Very often, salespeople jump into it and say, hey, there's an opportunity. I want to close this piece of business. But I think if you can demonstrate and say to the client, where are you right now in the process? Help me understand what the timeline is. Help me understand if there are other resources necessary that I can bring to bear as your consultant on this. I found that to be really valuable. The final thing that I would say, Phil, and I think you and I share this, is demonstrate a passion, right? Really, by demonstrating you know who the client is, you know what the objective is, but really create that passion for it, because they're going to understand that you have a consistency to your process. You're committed to them. You're not there for the quick fix. They're going to be able to understand intuitively that this individual really understands my business, wants to be part of this, and this is somebody that I think can grow along with the business.
Bill, those are all great comments that you got right there. I do want to follow up on a couple of things. The issue of empathy. I think you're exactly right. Empathy is so critical to building and forging long-term relationships and really getting somebody to a level of deep trust with you. My instinct is probably several of the students at University of Georgia are going to be going into careers where their sales roles and responsibilities may focus more on a specific product or a specific service that they're going to be selling, and they may not be as consultative as we are in our roles, and as consultative as you are in the sales process. How does somebody develop that intuition of empathy, or that skill of empathy, or characteristic or trait when they're really limited in what they can provide to an organization or to an individual from a product standpoint?
Yeah, Phil, I think that's a great point. So many times there'll be sales individuals that will come in. There'll be 3, 4, 5 different companies all making a presentation. They're all going to have great command of what the product or solution is. They're going to be able to discuss how it's going to work inside the company, how it's going to achieve the metrics that they want to achieve. But being empathetic, I think, with the client, really being able to step back and say, I understand your business, right? I understand what potentially could go wrong in this. I want you to know that I have a passion for this. I have a passion for what you guys are trying to achieve in doing this. I just think it's a skill, Phil, that's often it's intuitively in us, but it has to be developed. And I think the key and most successful salespeople have really learned through experience to harness that.
You know, one of the things as I listen to you talk about the importance of empathy, if I am thinking about this in the right way, you've got to be more focused on the client than you are your product or your solution set. And by being well versed in the challenges and issues that are being faced by the company, even if you don't have a product, even if you don't have a solution that fits that high priority need of the client, the ability to network through other channels to be able to help solve that issue for the client, that earns a lot of favor down the line, does it not?
Phil, you're exactly right. I call that authenticity. If you can be able to look at a client and say, you know, I may not be the right fit for you right now. This may not be the right solution, but what I've heard you say today leads me to this. I think that they'll find that that will pay dividends for you, maybe not in that immediate opportunity, but down the road, because you've really displayed that authenticity that I think a partner is looking for.
Good deal. So second follow-up is on this comment of passion. And again, I think you're absolutely right. People that are passionate about what they do, passionate about the solution set that they offer and bring to the table, that individual is going to be more successful long-term than the individual who doesn't have the passion bug. When we initially go into new roles and new responsibilities, our first sales job out of college, yes, we're passionate at the get-go, but how do we develop, and you used the word authentic just a few minutes ago, and I want to get there. How do we develop that authentic passion that comes from not just loving the company that we work for and loving the services, but so that becomes part of our natural fiber? I've seen you in a couple of different roles and responsibilities, both with our company and with prior companies, and you've always exhibited that true passionate gene. And some of that's hardwired, but a lot of that gets developed through experiences. How do these young people really develop that passion?
I think Phil, it starts with learning never stops. It's being inquisitive, being intuitive, really wanting to learn. Take advantage of more senior people around you. Understand where they've been really successful. Ask them questions about, hey, I'm new at this. How do I really understand, how to get command of all the issues and the topics that I have to? And I think by doing that, it creates a disciplined process that you learn to follow, Phil, and more successful people follow that disciplined process. And when you have command of something in that discipline, you're much more comfortable in it. It becomes repetitive. And I think it carries, you through naturally. And people really say, that's somebody I'd like to work with, do business with, and be a partner with.
Well, folks, as you can tell, Bill Eustis is a true pro. He lives in the northeastern part of the United States, and outside of the world of COVID restrictions, has traveled extensively, has built relationships throughout the globe, and he does it through the characteristics that he talks about. There's an authenticity, there's a genuineness, there's a passion, and he's one of the most empathetic people that I know. Bill, thanks for sharing your insights and your wisdom with the class today. Thanks. Good to be with you, Phil. I want to go to another colleague, also a New Englander, although she didn't grow up in the Massachusetts area, but Shannon Price is a two-year colleague of ours at Canon. She enjoyed a distinguished career in the asset management business. She was in national sales for Eaton Vance. We were lucky enough a couple of years back to convince Shannon to join us. And Shannon, we've chatted numerous times about the power of positive influence on your life, and encouraging you to do things that perhaps at times you didn't even think possible. You got a couple of good pearls of wisdom that I think you can share with the students.
Sure, Phil. Happy to. So I'm going to share some advice that I received from my father. So always good advice to follow. It happened around the time of my senior year of college. And I came to him and I said, good news, bad news. I was a finance major in school. I really wanted to get into finance. I had a job offer from a financial services company. The bad news was it was cold calling, which absolutely scared the living daylights out of me. And his advice to me was to challenge yourself, to do something that's outside your comfort zone. So I took his advice and I took the job. Now, I was a very reserved and not overly confident person with social activities outside of my immediate comfort zone. So I really found it very, very difficult. Now, the thing is, I remembered his advice. And was it easy? I took the job. It was not easy. It was probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And the two biggest challenges I found, the first was it was not me. The second was rejection. So going back to the first, as you can imagine, not me. I wasn't that overly aggressive, fast-talking salesperson that you think of when you think of people who are doing phone sales. And the other is the rejection. I took it so personally. Every single time someone hung up the phone, not always saying the most pleasant things as they were hanging up the phone. But those were two challenges, and I kept on reminding myself, what would my dad say? And he would say, challenge yourself and work outside your comfort zone. So those were challenges that I overcome. Now, the not me, how did I overcome that? I changed my mindset. So I remembered it was something that he always said, it's not a marathon, it's a sprint. And my own approach was to be what I'll call politely persistent. So that was my sales approach. So I wasn't the one, and I had many of my colleagues, I actually remember the big room, we all stood up and we all had our headphones on. I was the only woman with 25 men. Everyone was just dialing and dialing and dialing and just talking, hanging up, talking, hanging up. And I just took a different approach. I noted when people kept me on the phone for longer than 30 seconds. I noted if they said something like, I would love to chat with you, but my daughter's getting married. It's not this time. The time is not right now, but maybe another time. And I took note, and I called them back in 3 months or 4 months, whatever it should be. But I praised myself for being different than the rest of the cold callers, and that politely persistent approach definitely worked. Now, the other is dealing with rejection. That's harder to do. It's easy to say, oh, just get over it. It's still hard today dealing with rejection, but I think that I benefited from that rejection. I definitely developed a thicker skin, which was absolutely necessary as a woman in the financial services field. So I think developing the thicker skin, made me more resilient. It definitely helped me in my long-term career because I challenged myself in the beginning.
Well, Shannon, that all of your pearls of wisdom right there are fantastic. I hope that my daughters one day will look back with the same affection that you have for your dad's wisdom that he shared. Let me ask you this: we've also talked a lot about mentorship and having individuals who not only can help guide you, but can help promote you. You've talked at times about the difference in having a mentor versus having a sponsor, and I think that's fabulous insight. Care to share a bit about that?
Sure. And I'm sure your girls will also be one day quoting your advice when they're being interviewed. So there really is a difference between a sponsor and a mentor. And I wish I had these pearls of wisdom earlier on in my career. There's something that really didn't develop till very late. And just to point out the differences between a sponsor and a mentor. I mean, a mentor is someone who provides guidance and feedback and even coaching. But a sponsor is different. They're usually in a position of power, and they speak about you when you're not in your room. So they're advocates for you. So I think it's very important to have both mentors as well as sponsors. And I would definitely encourage anyone early on in their career. That was the biggest, the biggest kind of void that I felt like I had. And I have been definitely paying it forward in terms of being both a sponsor and a mentor to many people in financial services, and hopefully it's paying off for them.
Well, that's fantastic. Many corporations today have mentor programs in which young employees are partnered with very often somebody 3 to 5 years their senior in their role or in their career to help them navigate some of the challenges that they face. So that's often provided. This idea of a sponsor, though, that's personally developed, right? That's all about relationship development. What would you offer to young people as they are making their transition into the business world, into a sales environment, about cultivating relationships with individuals that could potentially become sponsors?
Right. So I would note a few things. I agree with that. A lot of these, companies have programs where they pair people. But I would encourage, and it's something that we always did at my past employer, that you form those relationships on your own. It's almost like a blind date. If you're set up and it happens to work, great, but how often does it? you have to find someone who you can connect with who's also willing to invest that time in you. But I would definitely use those programs as a resource, use the alumni networks, use LinkedIn. There are so many things at your disposal in this day and age that you should be able to reach out to people, and they're either willing to or they're not. But definitely, I've seen it happen with other colleagues that they're getting to the positions that they're in now because they had that sponsor who spoke about them and spoke highly about them when they were not in the room. And those were the people who were deciding on the candidates for jobs and who would get the final spots.
Well, Shannon, thanks for that great perspective, that great insight. One of the things that Shannon mentioned in her comments was she's certainly tried to, quote unquote, pay it forward. And I think that's one of the things that you as students will see as you move into your professional careers. There are many individuals who, well, we've all been helped by others along the way, but there are many individuals who recognize the importance of that type of help, the type that Shannon has just mentioned. And I think that you're going to find that some of those individuals are willing to pay it forward. They want to be helpful to you. And so take that opportunity.
Yeah. Phil, if I could add, many times a former colleague of mine used to be in front of a room, and this was a particular women's only group in finance. And we would say multiple times, please reach out to us, please reach out to us. And out of a group of about 100 and so people, maybe a handful would actually do it. So if people are saying reach out and they want to help, it's because they want to help. So take them up on it.
Well, Shannon, again, great insight. Thanks for your perspectives. And as I mentioned at the close of Bill's comments, the same with Shannon. We'll be providing email address, and you can get in touch with Shannon if you got any specific questions for her. All right, so fantastic insight from both Bill and Shannon right there. It's great, I can just tell you as a professional, to work with other real professionals, folks that get it. There's a genuineness, there's an authenticity about both of those individuals, and so I hope that was helpful to you as well. Again, to summarize our thoughts for today, you're never going to be in a static situation the rest of your life. There are always going to be things that are changing. So your ability to adapt to change, your ability to be authentic, your ability to prepare, to practice, to have mentors, to have sponsors, all of these things are so critically important. As a fellow University of Georgia Bulldog, I was there many, many moons ago. But as a fellow Bulldog, I wish each of you the absolute best. Go Dogs. Good luck to each of you. We're going to be sharing contact information, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, for both Bill and Shannon. My information also will be attached. If there's ever anything that I can do for any of you, if you'd like to pick up the phone and have a conversation, be happy to do so. In the meantime, good luck. Great success to each of you, and go Dogs.